Rockford for Classic Rocks, 96.7 The Eagle. It is Double T. Joining me is coming to District Bar and Grill on Friday, August 17th, comedian Frank Caliendo. Frank, what's going on today?
Hey, great, first of all. It takes me a second to remember how I'm doing. But I'm thinking aback, apparently. I'm using language that nobody uses anymore. And thinking back, I met you years ago, right? You were there in at the studio, and you were just single T back then, right?
Yes, I've grown, and now I'm a double T. But yeah, you did. I had you on in the afternoon. We had a great time. You did a show here in Rockford before.
Yeah, incredible. From what I don't know. Now I'm just congratulating myself on being there before. In the words of Charles Barkley, that was just terrible. So, yeah, Barkley's one of those guys. See how I segue into these little bits?
Yeah.
Charles Barkley's one of those guys that I love the honesty from him, and I'm trying to do that in my own act, is to get to that honesty. But what Charles Barkley would do, like, he's the only guy I've ever heard as an analyst on television say something like this during a basketball game. It was talking about Draymond Green from the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference NBA Finals. Like, I want to punch Draymond Green in the face. And I don't know if they maybe have to bleep me out here, but he actually said this on TV. This is what he actually said. I want to punch Draymond Green's ass in the face, which anatomically, I don't even know if that's possible or what that means. But it was his apology that really made me love Charles Barkley even more, because they made him apologize. He didn't want to apologize. And what he did was he said something he could live with, and then everybody else could be happy with, at TNT. And he was like, I apologize for Draymond Green having such a punchable face, which that's not an apology in any way, shape, or form, but it's truly Charles Barkley-esque, and it made me love him even more. So that's the kind of, I'm talking little bits about that kind of stuff and breaking down people a little bit more. And people ask me, one of the things about the show, still doing some of the impressions, or a lot of the impressions. Actually, at the end of the show, I actually do, if I haven't done an impression people want to hear, I'll do it for them. And then we do after the show, we're actually doing full-on meet and greets every place we go, and saying hello to people, taking pictures and signing stuff. But people ask me, why am I working on stuff outside of the impressions more? And I was like, well, look, every one of my heroes seems to be falling from grace. 10 years ago, if you said, talked about Bill Cosby, people are like, oh, I hope he's going to do a Bill Cosby impression. Now I talk about Bill Cosby, people are like, oh, I hope he doesn't do a Bill Cosby impression. He went from being the safest impression in the world to being thought of as, in a very bad light. Even Morgan Freeman, who in my act I used to talk about, he played God, Bruce Almighty, in every movie you'd see. If God was going to show up, you'd go, oh, this is the perfect spot for Morgan Freeman, to the point where when he died, be up in heaven, God be like, or he'd be like, well, God, how do you think I did? And God looked back at him, I thought you did pretty well. And now it'd be, well, how do you think I did? Well, you did pretty well in the movies, but there's some other things we need to talk about. So that's where, I'm trying to come from real places and how I see these things more, as opposed to just making flat-out observations and then doing a bit. And I'm talking about my family more, and my son. Do you have kids?
I do. I have a daughter.
How old is she?
16.
Okay, so my son just turned 14, but I haven't seen him for a while because he plays a video game called Fortnite.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable the addictiveness of this game, and people don't understand, because when we're kids, for some people listening, it might even have been Pac-Man, and then Zelda and stuff like that, Mortal Kombat, that type of stuff. But this game, I've never seen any. We could play for a few hours, and then we'd go outside. Now my son will be playing, and I'll be like, he's so addictive. I'm trying to get him hooked on heroin just to get him out of his room. That's where I'm at. And people will be like, really? No, not really. But it's the other day he came out of his room and he's like, what's that? I'm like, daylight. You're a vampire.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then the Fortnite dances, people are doing the Fortnite dances and so on. It's just crazy. Now, people do know me for the impression stuff, so I do hit on that a little bit. And the Madden thing is interesting because I just have a reaction. I just give people a little bit of it when they ask, because I'll be at an airport, so I'll be like, do some John Madden. And my reaction is always like, boom. And the worst place to do that is actually in the airport at TSA, because next thing you know, you're in solitary. So that's the kind of stuff that I try to talk about, and it seems to be working really well. It's also taking lots of chances and doing different jokes and bits that I've never done before, and I'm finding that people in this day and age actually like to see a little bit of failure.
Right.
And I'm giving them plenty of that at times. So I'm doing longer shows, so it's not like they're not getting the full kind of show, but they're getting lots of new stuff, and some of the stuff is being worked on, and then I give them some of the best of stuff to go with it because they're paying. I always feel like you should do that. If people are paying money, you got to give them what they want. So
is it kind of like Freebird? People just start yelling out their favorite impressions then?
Yeah. If I'm going to compare it to something else, it is not as famous as Freebird or Stairway, but it's in that world that do some John Madden, and that's why I get to it. I used to not get to it to 3/4 of the way through, and I could kind of feel people waiting for it, but I would do a long bit about it. Now I just hit it a little bit at the top and mess around with it, because, like I said, I didn't say this, but John Madden hasn't even been around for 15, 20 years now. I mean, it's crazy. At least 10 years. He's not even in the video game anymore. So that's just a surreality that we live in. I don't know if that's a word. But,
I'm talking to Frank Caliendo. He's coming to District Bar and Grill on Friday, August 17th. When you were growing up, were you that weird kid in the back of class?
I was pretty quiet, actually. I didn't make a lot of noise until about 6th grade. And then I was in the middle of the class, and I was always able to read the teacher pretty well, so I didn't get in any trouble. But I was weird. Don't get me wrong on that. I just was in the back of the class. And I didn't really even talk to people until 5th or 6th grade. And then I started messing with, being pretty much a smart aleck and messing with friends and doing impressions of friends and teachers, and just mimicking that type of stuff, and it took off more for me, and I found that's where I got a lot of humor from. But it was always hiding. It was never me talking about me. It was hiding and doing something else and being someone else. So that's a lot of time I've built up a wall around myself. A tremendously large wall around Frank Caliendo, and I'm going to make all my former friends pay for it.
Now, that's got to be fun. The president, he's got some interesting things going on. You could pull that one out every once in a while.
Yeah, you know what? I do a bunch on it, and none of it is. I always come from people come from completely different backgrounds all around, and everybody has a reason for what they believe. So I do a bunch of Trump stuff. None of it's really political. Most of it's just silly and talking about how, for example, he will get people on board. President Obama would do this. Let me be clear. He would say that, and then he'd give you like a Jedi move, and you'd be like, how did that come? But Donald Trump will say this at the end of sentences, and everybody knows it. So you'll be like, there's a colony of people on Mars, and 100% of those people voted for me, and everybody knows it. And then you'll be walking down the street, people are like, do you hear about that colony of people on Mars? Yeah, 100% of them voted for Donald Trump. How do you know? Everybody knows it. And I'm not the only one saying this. So it's every politician or person and says that stuff. And so for me, I always look at it as I'm not going to take any side. I make fun of these guys. I made fun of President Obama. I made fun of President Bush, President Clinton, President Trump, which I still have. It's funny for me to say that. This isn't a political thing at all. But it's funny to say. If I had said 10 years ago, President Trump, you're like, oh yeah, and Vice President Hogan, let me take you further. Come on.
Frank Caliendo's coming to District Bar and Grill on Friday, August 17th. It's got to be fun, though, to try to do something different and not rely on all the impressions the whole time.
Yeah, and even part of it is throwing the impressions out there, and there are times where I could get extra laughs later. I explain it like this. When you're do impressions, and people know you do impressions, it's like being a magician. Everybody's waiting for the next magic trick, and they don't care what you're doing in between the magic tricks, unless you're Penn and Teller, right? You're Penn and Teller, then it's an interesting. So I'm trying to get to that, to be the comedic Penn and Teller, I guess, which they are actually comedians, so maybe I'm going to have to start doing some magic. But that's the difference I see in it. Everybody's always waiting for that next impression. When you do stuff, when I talk more as myself up front and do some stuff about family, because women would always come up to me, mostly women. I'm not going to say this 100%, but a lot of women would come up to me after shows and be like, "Oh, that was so great. I love when you started talking about your wife or your kids." And guys would come up to me, "Just do more voices." So there's a reality to that, and I'm so known for all the sports impressions that people don't realize I'm not just a sports impressionist, and that's not what the show is. There's stuff in there, but it's like when you watch the news. There's a little bit of sports, a little bit of weather, and a story about a puppy that found its way back, after being away from home for 3 weeks.
Talking to Frank Caliendo. He's coming to District Bar and Grill on Friday, August 17th. I think nowadays people also like to go behind the curtain. They want to know more about you. They want to get closer to you. They want to know what you're all about.
Yeah, there's definitely that and I don't mind doing it so much on stage. I'm getting better at that. Where I struggle is Facebook, and I don't mind trying to do little posts and doing stuff on Facebook that's entertaining, but people give back, backstage to their entire lives, and that just seems odd to me. Plus, my wife would post stuff on Facebook about where we're going and that type of thing, and I'm like, don't do that. She's like, why? I'm like, because I like to lie. I don't want. I tell people I can't be somewhere because I'm busy, and they'll see where I am.
And then you're telling people, go ahead, rob my house. I'm not there.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. She's even brought that up before. That's funny because she's like, well, why did you post that? Well, only the people that know me can see. Those are the people I don't trust.
Well, before I let you go, I got to get a grand finale of a few voices to throw at people.
We just go from Al Pacino to a little bit of Adam Sandler, Morgan Freeman, always fun. I mean, you talk about it, I'll tell you what, man. It's tremendous. We are not using any new technology. We're not using GPS. By the way, with John Gruden, why is he not using GPS? Why aren't the rookies here at practice? Because they're not using GPS anymore. That's why they're not. That's just terrible. Think about it for a second. That's very odd, very odd. I want Jeff Goldblum. I'm the crazy guy from Thor.
Comedian Frank Caliendo. He's coming to District Bar and Grill Friday, August 17th. If people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
FrankOnStage.com gives you all the information about the shows, plural, and then at Frank Caliendo on Instagram, and which I'm starting to try and work on doing more of that. And then Twitter is at Frank Caliendo as well. And FrankCaliendo.com give you all the information. I put FrankOnStage.com just so people didn't have to spell Caliendo.
Frank, thanks so much for taking the time. Frank Caliendo's coming to District Bar and Grill Friday, August 17th. Go out and see the show. It's Rockford's home for classic rock, 96.7, The Eagle.